So
Cool.
welcome everyone to our volume 2 of For Women by Women. I have again the amazing pleasure of co-hosting this with Aisha Birsel, who many of you already know. For those of you who don't, Aisha is the co-founder of Birsel+Seck. She's the author of
Leia. I thought you were going to say many of you know, but might not recognize.
Oh, I should have said that with her new hairdo. So many of you know her. She's our fearless leader over at Birsel+Seck and has been spearheading these salons as well as so many other things that we do. I've had the pleasure of working with Aisha for 30 plus years, which is sort of scary to say, but true. So anyway, again, thank you for coming back. For those of you who came to volume 1, for those of you that you're just joining us, thank you for coming. This is our second presentation of For Women by Women. We asked our wonderful guests to come back. It was such a great turnout and we had such wonderful responses that we wanted to get them to join us again, because unfortunately we actually ran out of time the last time to really get to allow you guys to really interact with them. So welcome. And as we always start off,
this is the Q&A part of.
Yes, it's really the Q&A of round 1. Plus, we have some amazing rising stars that we're going to introduce you to, some female women in the design and business world. But we always start out with our beating heart to just let you know how happy we are to be here and have you all here. We're going to next do the second thing that we always do, and Aisha is going to lead this for us, which is a warm-up.
Thank you, Leia. And everyone, I would love to introduce Leia as well, who needs no introduction. But not only is she one of my oldest and dearest friends and collaborators, but she's also an amazing brand designer and strategist with many years of experience under her belt, because she started when we were both 5. Because Leia, you gave away our age, come on. And I'm also just so happy to have around the table Seda Eves, who's also one of our dearest friends and collaborators, as well as Meltem Parlak, who is one of our rising stars, but also part of Birsel+Seck. And then Selin, Sonmez, Yuko. Well, I don't want to introduce them too soon, but I think of them as family as well, of the extended family of Birsel+Seck. So with that, okay, I'll stop talking and ask you to grab some paper and a pen. If you don't have it right around you, this is a good time to run, and it could just be a Post-it or something, but let's do our warm-up. And if you've ever done anything with us, you know that we love to do a warm-up to enter the creative space and tell our right brains, you know, we're using you, we're working with you. And it's a way to center ourselves here. So the warm-up, you have 2 minutes to draw a leader. Just whatever comes to your mind, go with your gut feeling. That's the best place to start. And draw a leader. And it could be somebody you know, it could be an abstract idea of a leader, it could be somebody you know of. And then we'll come out of our screen and then we'll hold it up and share it and look at each other's leaders. And while you do that, we have so many friends here, so thank you very much for coming today. All right. Does that sound like a, are you all making a museum piece here? That's not the idea. Come on. Let's, you want to hold it up? Everyone? Ready? Cool. Meltem, will you take a screenshot? Love it. So how many people drew a woman leader? I love it. Well, let me tell you, we are unfortunately the exception. So according to a study done where people were asked to draw a leader, most people drew men. And that's because there is, you know, that's who we're used to seeing as men. And the thing about this is to fix it, it's called a confirmation bias. Basically, what we need to do is constantly expose ourselves and each other to diverse leaders. And so that you start noticing people who fit that profile. So the more we see women as leaders, the more our bias will be towards seeing women as leaders. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to get together with all of you and talk about what it means to be a designer and creative who's a leader, and designing for women and others as well. So with that, let's go back to our presentation. Everybody feeling warmed up? Yeah? Cool.
Yes. So we wanted to reintroduce our guests. We got 4 out of 5 of the people who attended, who were our guests last time, were able to come back and join us again, and we're so grateful. So the first person we want to introduce or remind you of is Patrice Martin. She is the co-founder and CEO of the holding company, which is, or the holding co, forgive me, which is a company looking to develop a new kind of equity and develop, really focused on finding new ways for caregiving. And we pulled one quote from each person who was a guest last time. And for Patrice, what we wanted to remind everybody that she had said was that the work of taking care of loved ones disproportionately falls on women's shoulders. When the work is not truly a choice, it holds women back. We are getting to know the caregiving issues more viscerally, looking at where there is an opportunity for this to change. The frame is care, but it's really about life. So Patrice, thank you for coming back. Hello.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited.
So then our next guest who has rejoined us is Margo Georgiadis. And she talked to us about a new kind of leadership. She is a CEO, an investor, and a board director. And what she talked to us about was this new kind of leadership where there's a new humanity at work, where leaders are authentic, listening to what people need, willing to open up and have the honest and the hard conversations, to show vulnerability and to be inclusive. And these were all qualities that Margo reminded us are very much female qualities and things that we want to celebrate at work, particularly now in this coming out of COVID world, fingers crossed. So Margo, hello.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you for organizing.
So then the next person is Chang, and she's the co-founder and VP of design at Crave. and what we had her really talk about is her place as kind of a new design activist. And she talked a lot about the fact that design for women is still seen as something radical, and that's crazy. It shouldn't be. She says we should have already been designing with a women's experience in mind. And that is not just I love this, that it's not just menstruation, boobs, and tubes, but about how we live. So T, thank you for coming back.
Thanks for having me. So glad to be back.
I wanted to ask T what the tubes were about, but okay.
Oh, the tubes, like fallopian tubes, like your ovaries.
Oh, thank you. Okay,
yes.
Cool.
The boobs, and the tubes, and the menstruation. Love it.
It's like haiku.
And then the fourth person is Debbie Millman, who probably needs no introduction for so many of you. Debbie is a designer and the host of Design Matters, like kind of the first design podcast, and has been running for countless years, 16 years. So with Debbie, it was really wonderful. What Debbie ended up doing was sharing with us a kind of journal story that she had written about herself as a young designer. And so she really like posed a lot of questions, like what does it mean to be a young woman without any sense of herself, without any real direction, without guidance? And what happens when you start your career from a place of real insecurity and a sense of scarcity? And in her story, she takes us through this and kind of shows us what happens. And it's really beautiful and kind of, in her case, sort of a personal self-mentorship, which was really wonderful. So Debbie, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be back.
Thank you.
So we're gonna go on, and what we want to do is, just so everybody knows, the format is going to be that we're also going to now introduce Aisha is going to talk a little bit about kind of what we took from the last conversation, and then we're going to introduce to you our rising stars. So be patient with us, and then we're going to go into a Q&A, and you can ask everybody any questions that you had from the previous session or anything that you want to ask now.
Great. Thank you. These are visual cliff notes of volume 1, and it's really about making women visible, both as leaders, but also as users. And so I won't dive too much into it, but making ourselves visible. And then having a voice. And T, you talked about this, and so we wanted to capture that as well. And then if we go to the next slide, as women having a voice, you said one of the things about who we are as women in this patriarchal society, and I'm quoting you here, is that if you do not use your voice, nothing can change. If you have a problem, if you don't speak up about it, there is no way in hell anything will ever change. And so that's one of the messages that I really try to help encourage and share. And that's what you do. And I was like rereading and listening to our first session just to remember what are the things we talked about. And just kind of as I was doing that, my daughter, who just finished high school and is 17 and now like has this wonderful summer in front of her, she was watching, if you can believe it, the Little Mermaid. And I hear the Little Mermaid talk about you know, the conversation between Little Mermaid and Ursula, right? And basically Ursula wants Little Mermaid to give up her voice, and in return for her, you know, human legs. And Little Mermaid is like, but if I do that, how will I able to sing or talk or express myself? And Ursula says, well, you'll just have to do that without the voice. And by the way, there's something called body language. And I was listening to this and it really made this idea of, I was like, oh my God, like we're fed this information from very early on that you have to, if you want something, you have to give up your voice. And we really need to hang on to that. And then I went to my daughter and I was like, oh, this is what this is, you know, can you believe it? And she was like, oh, Mom, come on, you know, I don't want to hear about that. Let me just enjoy my my story. But anyway, so thank you, T, and everyone for bringing your voices here and joining ours. And the next one was about being authentic. And Margo, you talked about this quite a bit in terms of the authenticity of leadership and how women leaders exemplify this and how important it is for all of us to bring ourselves to work and to be there fully as a person with all our vulnerabilities, and that as women leaders, we're very welcoming of this idea and we need to do more of that. And then the last bit was guidance, and this was about both Patrice, you talked about this, and Debbie, you talked about this as well, guiding others and helping others, you know, help others rise as well, and that we can all rise together. And in this, we have a responsibility, especially to the next generation, to bring them in as well, and to have this give and take relationship of collaboration and inspiring each other and recognizing each other. So with that, Leah, we wanted to recognize 3 youthful but amazing young rising stars of design that we've had the privilege of working together, but now they're, you know, onto their own businesses, they're designers and entrepreneurs. So Leah, you want to introduce everyone?
Yes. So our first rising star is Selin Sonmez, and she is the co-founder of One Roof. Selin has worked with us at Birsel+Seck. She worked for many, many years with us, and it's kind of amazing to think that since then she's already gone on to not only found One Roof, which is a social network in residential buildings. She developed it during COVID. It's to help create connections amongst people who live under the same roofs, let's say. But she also founded another company that she has already gone on to sell. So Selin is like a total rock star. And so we're so happy to introduce her. Selin, if you want to talk a little bit about your One Roof, that would be wonderful.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm so honored to really be next to the guests. And yeah, I can just mention, like, I'm a second-time founder, and this really came, it's a COVID child, as we call it. It came because with the quarantine and everyone just focusing more internally and into their own proximate world or closely proximate world, how can we make more connections, build more friendships? And the idea of connecting with neighbors that live together and being more resourceful, more supportive, and just being more fun as a community came up, and we're kind of scaling that through an application.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
we're going to allow.
We'll put the link in the chat, right?
Yes, the link will be in the chat, and Selin and Yuko and Meltem will be asking our previous guests some questions as soon as we finished introducing them. So our next rising star is Yuko Kanai, and she's another one who, you know, Yuko worked with us at Birsel+Seck, did some amazing research projects with us. She has now gone on to new pastures. She is one of the founding team members of Zencape, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what this is. It's a product that I think we all wish we'd had throughout our lives, particularly maybe in our teen years.
Hi, everybody. My name is Yuko, like Leah mentioned. I am really actually so humbled to be here alongside our guest today. I think the co-founder, Abby, who is on this call right now, she and I actually have spoken, looked to both like T and Debbie for inspiration throughout our time designing together. So it's just really a huge honor to be to share the stage with you guys. So just to tell you a bit about Zencape. So Zencape, we're on a mission to provide pelvic pain relief through community and smarter technology. You know, this was really born out of this frustration with clunky hot water bottles, you know, the canceled plans, and really honestly, the loneliness that comes with debilitating pain. And, you know, like many of you, we were really frustrated with that. We have had basically the same options to manage our pain for such a long time. You know, we have, you know, we have hot water bottles, which I just mentioned, which are so clunky. They're not very portable. We have hormonal treatments, which can come with a whole host of really intolerable side effects, and pharmacological options, which frankly don't work enough most of the time. And so, you know, today I'm actually really excited to tell you about the upcoming launch of our flagship product, the Zencape Cozy, which we envision to be the much better alternative to the conventional heating pad. You know, it's going to be discreet and comfortable. You'll be able to control it from your phone and set it to your perfect temperature. And you know, finally, it's going to be powered by a rechargeable battery. So you can truly be on the go. And, you know, T mentioned earlier that these products need to be like about how we live. And so we really like stuck to that mission and are really trying to center the voices of who we're designing for. So yes, please check out our website. We just launched it, designed by yours truly, zencape.com. Our product is in development. But,
Yes.
oh,
I just want to wear it just
Yes.
because it looks good.
Everybody check it out. Join the waiting list.
thank you so much.
Great.
And so then our third rising star is someone who most of you here are very, very, very familiar with. She's a part of our team now, Meltem Parlak. She's a superstar, and she has started a jewelry company that she's going to tell you a little bit about.
Thank you, Leah, for the lovely introduction. And as Yuko mentioned, I'm really honored to be here and like talking about. And I'm so excited because today is the official launch for my passion that I waited for so long, years and years. My independent and refined jewelry brand Sahil is now up. We can put the links. And I waited so long, all the time. There was something that held me. And finally, maybe it's like really seeing COVID as an opportunity, but I saw it and I did it. And now I'm happy and excited to continue with my brand.
Yay.
And you will notice that most of us here, myself and Aisha and some of the other speakers, are wearing Meltem's beautiful earrings.
Thank you, Meltem.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
So now each of our rising stars has prepared some questions for our previous guests. So we would love for you guys to ask them. Meltem, do you want to start?
Sure, I can
And then
start.
we're going to open up the stage to everybody. Anybody who wants to ask a question to Margo or Patrice or T or Debbie, get your questions ready. They're here.
It feels like the Milky Way here with all the stars in the room.
So thank you very much, Aisha and Leah, giving this opportunity and asking a question to our amazing guests. And I want to ask T, and T, you have such an amazing brand and you have such an amazing social media and you build an audience. And since I was just thinking today what kind of questions that I can ask, and it was really important, and it is important right now for me to build an audience. So just a couple sentences about like tips and like guidance about how do you build an audience? Like, how do you build a social media persona? Is it really important? What are the key things that I should follow?
Okay, I will do my best to try to answer that because I don't, it's interesting. The idea of crafting a persona was not really kind of how I went about it. I think because I was building my brand, there is such a taboo-ness around my company and anything my product represents. It doesn't matter how beautiful they are. They're just, you know, it's a necklace, whatever. None of that can be shared. Okay. And so I think as a way, you know, this is my baby. I'm the co-founder. You know, I've put so much of my life into this company. And so for me, I was like, okay, what's another way? What is something else that I can talk about? But I did it in such a way that it was really about understanding what kind of message will land. If that makes sense, because yes, I'm talking about vibrators, but I'm also really talking about activism because that's kind of how I design as a designer. I design from a place of an activist. And so I had to find a way to get my message through and do it in such a way that is correct. It works for the medium. So it's going to be different if you have a podcast. It's going to be different if it's about Instagram. And for me, my advice is that continue to hone in and iterate your message because it's all about the message landing. And I've been at it for about 10 years, you know, with Crave. And honestly, I don't feel like I got the messaging down until in the last 5. You know, because you can always go out the gate thinking what you represent. Like I am a high-end jewelry brand, you know, I'm not, you know, but then honestly, a brand is what other people say about you. And so you need to kind of put out there what it is that you are really about. And sometimes I would even recommend hiring someone like a social media coach that you trust who can help you refine some of that messaging as well. But don't think of it as like, oh, I'm crafting a persona. It's like you are crafting your voice so that so that message of what you're saying actually lands. And that rule is going to be different whether you're on TikTok or on Instagram or blog or on podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for explaining that because you make it seem so effortless. And I think a lot of us want to emulate you. And it's great to know that
Please aim higher, aim higher. Aim higher. Don't.
No, I think we aim just right. But and I love Yuko, what you put into the chat. She says, I'm here for the sex tech revolution. So yay.
We're all ready, but you know, the modern tech giants like Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and you know, they're not ready.
Ah, okay. That sounds like a whole other conversation. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I wonder if any of the other guests from last time have any advice for Meltem based on that same question.
I have one suggestion which builds on that, which is people love a powerful story and why you're doing this, what your beliefs are. And I think in today's world, people are so looking for not just stuff, but they're actually looking to be connected to something more deeply. And when I went to your website, the minute it came up in the chat, it just yells out at me that there must be a story behind the art that you're creating that people can resonate with and that draws them in versus all these other things that they can look at. And so, and I think that goes back to that authenticity we talked about last time. I think that we live in a world where people believe in storytelling. And I think one of the most powerful places to think about crafting those stories is a really good friend of mine. Her name is Nancy Duarte, and she has some really phenomenal tools that anyone can use about how to really think about who you are and how you tell a great story.
The only thing that I would add is I don't really think that people should aspire to be brands. I feel that brands are constructions that we create. They're manufactured. They don't have living, breathing souls. They don't bleed. And I think that what is much more important to cultivate is your character and your reputation. And while that might take a little bit longer to develop in terms of amplification, it will last a lot longer. And so if you work on developing the product, if you work on developing your service, if you work on developing your story and your purpose, then everything else tends to follow much more organically, as opposed to feeling forced or made up or opportunistic.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
And I love your earrings. They're beautiful.
Thank you.
Very out of my wheelhouse, but I put them on and I was like, wow, maybe I should shake this up a little bit.
Oh, so cool. Wow. Meltem, you need to take a picture of Debbie. And Debbie, what you said goes hand in hand with the authenticity that was one of the rising themes from our first conversation. So true. Thank you. And Leah, I also wanted to make sure that everybody in the audience chimes in and adds their questions as well, because that's really why we came back and our guests came back, was to answer all of your questions. So.
I'll chime in that, just following Debbie. Debbie, your interview with Brene Brown is like the most amazing thing with your wife, Roxanne Gay, and just like around just your leadership, your authenticity, your vulnerability is so beautiful. And I just told everybody to listen to it and just wanted to put it.
Thank you. Thank you. That makes me really happy. Thank you so much.
So glad you said that, Patrice, and we'll put up a link in the chat as well. Seda shared it with all of us, and we've been listening and re-listening, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yuko, do you have a question you wanted to pose?
I do, yes, thank you. All right, so I wanted to pose a question about creative process. With Zencape, it's, I believe that this is like an issue of social impact. This is not only a problem that really impacts so many women worldwide, but there is this really big untold story around women who are like women of color who are disproportionately affected by pelvic pain. Black women are 3 times more likely to have reoccurring uterine fibroids. Asian women are 50% more likely to have endometriosis. There are just so many layers to this. And with this kind of work, we really are like, we wanted to commit to this mission around how we design and our process, and like actually inviting people to the creative table, because that's how we like really kind of understand what we need as a collective, because Abby and I, we're just 2 people. We can't speak for the like broader experience. And so I wanted to ask you, when you invite, like I wanted to ask Debbie and T, like how, or anyone here actually, like how you invite the people that you're designing for to the table, so that you're like designing with, not just for.
Great question.
Ooh, that's a tough question, because I'm not exactly sure that I believe in the premise of the question, in that you're the specialist. So I'm also going to be 60 in a few months. So please hear this with a sense of my having done this for a really, really long time. And I'm sort of at a level of intolerance now with feedback from my clients. And so I'm at a point now where if somebody wants to hire me to do something, it's like going to a doctor and asking for a diagnosis. I don't go to my doctor and crowdsource my appendectomy. I had an appendectomy a week and a half ago. I went to the doctor, and if I had listened to my own point of view, I'd likely not have made it. I didn't want to go to the hospital. I said, what are the chances that I had an appendectomy? She said 75%, that I had an appendicitis rather. And I was like, well, until it's 100%, I'm not going to the hospital. If I had waited, it would have been a really bad thing. And then somehow sort of my sanity took over and I ended up going. If I had left it up to me, it would have been a disaster. So I'm sort of at a point in my career now where if somebody hires me for a point of view, I'm giving them a diagnosis and I'm giving them a solution. I'll tell them strategically why I believe that is the solution that they should have, but I'm no longer interested in fighting with them. And I'm no longer interested in trying to persuade them. This is my expertise. This is what I've been doing pretty much my entire professional career. And this is what I recommend. You can take it from here. But again, if I was 25, I don't think I'd have, when I was 25, when I was 40, I didn't have the balls to say things like that. But now I feel much more entitled, I think, to say, this is my point of view, this is what I believe. You don't have to believe it. I'm not begging you to believe it. But if you want my professional expertise, this is what it is.
So I'm gonna with all due respect, because
Absolutely.
what I do is that this is completely counter to how I work, because what I do, even though I am an industrial designer, it's my expertise, but I have to fully recognize that what I build, if it's not used by people and embraced by people worldwide, this is all gonna go to the landfill. And I think
that's a very different situation, because your situation is very different in that you're creating something for people to enjoy for themselves. It's a very intimate personal experience. Product design is very different than graphic design.
Absolutely, absolutely. I get that 100%. So that's why, because Yuko is making a physical product, and so in the ways of creating an actual product for us it's a constant iterative feedback, even at the conception stage. Like we have these Frankenstein models that are very, very early, because these ideas, the design process for us come from 3 different places. Either the market, you see something that's missing, 2, like the engineers or the designer has a really cool idea, I'm sorry, the engineer and or because it's of a technology, technology happens, you're like, this is super cool. Let's try to see if it actually makes sense. And then others from the designer. So for us, our idea comes from those places. And then what happens to answer your question about the design process is how do we involve the user, is that from that idea, we make a Frankenstein model, we send it out to as many people as feasible to see if this idea is even worth pursuing. We don't allow my ego or the engineer's ego or anyone's ego. We just like, do they even like it, And then from there, then we kill it very quickly, or we move forward to, to the next phase. And in the next phase, that's not it. We still do another phase of testing, because from, the Frankenstein to this middle to whatever goes to production is very, very different. And each time the number of users and testers get bigger and bigger, because now we're, you need to be even more diverse in all the different opinions that you bring in. And so I get it. If you're an expertise, like you're the graphic designer, like that 100%, like, this is what I'm going to tell you. I don't want you to fight you and stuff like that, whereas like in what I do, in order to be able to make sure that I'm designing with people, we build in the user feedback process like 3-4 times before something even becomes a manufacturable thing.
If I can interrupt for 1 second, I do want to clarify something. I'm not suggesting that it's my way or the highway in terms of feedback. I'm suggesting that my point of view about how a client should engage with their audience is what I'm saying. It's my kitty. So I'm not saying that I'm a good replacement for market research, for product feedback, but if somebody's looking for advice on how to create the most successful branding opportunity for their product, the plan that I envision, which would include market research, which would include feedback from consumers, that's really what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about coming in and saying, this is the one thing I recommend and there's nothing else. It's the plan that I would recommend that would include everything that you just said. So I do want to make sure that that's really clear, really, really clear.
It's a yes and, you know. And I love that everybody has these cats and dogs going in front of the cameras. And I feel a little left out, so I'll bring my rabbit is also going across. All right.
Patrice, I'm curious if Patrice, if you have any thoughts on Yuko's, you know, being part of a lab, and
I do, and I just want to agree with both Debbie and T. Like, one in just like the expertise and approach and confidence in putting out, like, know how to address a problem and the way in which you want to go about solving that. And also, like, I work a lot like T, where especially in product design, where we're just like putting out concepts, putting out ideas, and looking at them for feedback and for people to build upon them. But the role of designer in that frame is really as translator and interpreter, and how to take that information and then put that through a design lens and to make decisions that make sense for product in this case. But the other thing I want to mention, which I think is interesting in the way in which, you know, if you think about design in a bigger frame, or in more of like a how to enable creative capacity, is like designer as facilitator or as steward or as connector. And, you know, I run a lab that's about caregiving, where we see a lot of like missed opportunities for different types of people to meet each other and build on each other's work and work together. And so we in the fall built this list called the Care 100, which was like, these are 100 people we think are doing really inspiring things, from artists to investors to entrepreneurs to business leaders to activists to organizers and everything in between, and just creating the opportunity for those folks to see each other and know each other. And there have been like really cool collaborations that come out of it that, you know, quite frankly, we have nothing to do with, but in some ways, you know, the act of actually creating that list or that space is an act of creative facilitation, and kind of drawing this, you know, different kind of boundary that I think is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and also I just want to say, you know, I totally hear you, Debbie, especially like there's a funny saying about how if you asked a customer, like I think this is like about Henry Ford, like if you ask an everyday person, what do you want? They'd be like, I want a faster horse. You know, they will fail to have imagined there's you can make a car, you know what I mean? And so you just have to figure out where you are in that process. And also I think as the role of the designer, I'm a big fan of Mike Monteiro. I don't know if you know him. He is like, oh my God, I love what he says when, as the designer, you are the gatekeeper. That means there are some things that you know just should not be freaking made. For example, Keurig. Okay, sorry, I hate the Keurig. Even the Keurig designer was like, I'm sorry, world, that I created this. I am sorry. But then I'm sure he's laughing to the bank. Okay, he's doing just fine. But we need to be the gatekeeper, and with our expertise, tell our clients no when it's just a bad idea. You know, and have the balls to do it, and also be hard on yourself in that, as a designer, is this something you really want to bring to the world? Does it add value? Does it have a place to be? So that's my.
Yeah. I also want to say that I borrowed the doctor analogy from Massimo Vignelli, who was famous for offering one design recommendation to his clients. He wouldn't show the usual 8 to 10 that so many designers do. He felt that he was being hired to show what his best idea is, and that was what he did. But I also think that it does take time to get to a point in one's career where people will trust that what you are saying to them has validity. And again, you know, a person in the chat was asking about our last talk together and my origin story. You know, I didn't have any kind of sense of self-worth, of any kind of belief in my opinion, or even the education or wherewithal to be able to make sound decisions about recommendations to clients until I was really well seasoned in my career.
Thank you so much. Like I feel so encouraged to really trust myself and and grow and be the expert in the room. And T, I really appreciate your tactical recommendations for how to actually engage users in the development process. And just knowing that you guys are you're out there, it just really kind of feeds into my sense of confidence of what I can achieve one day, hopefully. So thank you for.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I want to try to pull Margo into the conversation because I think that everyone else is coming from a design perspective, and Margo, maybe you from more of a client perspective could give us a little bit of your thoughts on this discussion.
Well, I actually think our worlds all collide. We think they're really different, but I think, having built a lot of technology platforms, the whole design, development, iteration process of how do you reimagine an experience by taking it from physical to digital or creating new digital experiences that didn't exist. It's all starts from being bothered by the way things are or seeing a gap in the way things work today that you believe fundamentally needs to be improved. And so I really enjoyed the conversation because I felt exactly as Patrice said, that the best ideas come from that unexpected mashup of thinking. If I think about my many, many years at Google, it was exactly what she said. It was putting together whole different ways for people to look at a problem to come up with what would be a truly magically 10x, as we used to say, right, better way of doing it. And I think that's when we all feel the best about what we create, is that it truly brings things to the next level. And so I just wanted to applaud because I think design is such an important part. And in technology companies, I think design wasn't really a part of it in the brute force era of computing. But now that it's transforming every aspect of our life, right now I'm spending a ton of time in transformational health experiences. And without great design thinking, right, given the complexity of what's happening there, we dramatically underserve. And so I'm really excited to see much more integration, not just in the physical world, but in the physical and digital world and how all those things come together. And Yuko's product, right? You're not just talking about the product itself, but you're talking about the community that goes with it, that together create people to feel seen and a conversation where people can try things, but not just feel physically better, but they feel emotionally better. And those two things coming together are powerful.
Could I jump in there? My name's Eileen, and I just want to applaud you all and pick up on what Margo is saying. My brother is a kidney transplant recipient, and he was diagnosed at 16 with nephritis. And then in his 20s, he received a kidney. Well, he's in his late 50s now. And the question that Yuko is asking, how to engage people. My brother leveraged his experience as a patient, but he also tied his career in. He was chief of staff of several of the US government organizations. And what he did is he created this huge group of kidney transplant recipients and started to give them a presence and a voice, because all of his time going through that experience with that disease, a lot of things that Margo said, when he was younger, he wasn't perceived as having experience, but as he got older, he started interacting much more directly with his doctors. And the other point that Margo made, based on his career of being chief of staff, like he was chief of staff of OPM, Homeland Security, and the Department of Labor, what he did is he looked at all this technology coming out and he said, how can I leverage this? And he started talking to some of his doctors at Georgetown, and they came up with this idea. Ultimately, my brother became the president of the American Association of Kidney Patients after he moved out of working in the government. But tying back to Yuko's question, what he did is he said, look at this tremendous diverse, geographically dispersed group of people that we can tie together with technology. And I have this leadership experience. I can step into teaching these people how to have a voice, and we can bring the doctors in and the designers in. And we can also tie together all the futuristic stuff that's going on, because like in medical development, this probably Margo has like huge knowledge in this area, maybe can't talk about it, but there's all this cool artificial intelligence stuff going on. So to kind of bring it back to you, Yuko, what my brother did is he was a recipient of this design stuff. And I mean, there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of life at risk. But there's also a lot of excitement because a lot of life is saved. And I think if you took what you're doing and you tied into the pain, you know, that women experience, but you also tie into the opportunity to relieve that pain, you know, and let life explode. I bet if you just got some of these designers together on this call and you kind of broke down the design life cycle, and then maybe you tied it in some of what Debbie's saying, because what Debbie is saying is, I'm a subject matter expert, right? She's saying, look, I've got all this experience and I know this works. And then if you got all these subject matter experts together and you map their journey, because every subject matter expert comes through a journey, and it's different than other people's journeys, but it's also similar to a lot of people. So that kind of ties back to, you know, you were talking about the African-American women or the Asian women. So they have like a collective journey, and it's all different from each other, but you could get all these people together and do some structured brainstorming around how you want to build out, how you want to connect people, and what you want to achieve. And then also, and I have a product design background. What I think is cool about my brother, I just want to say, when you asked us to draw, you know, a leader, I drew my brother, because my brother just stepped into a global position, and he's launching this massive global initiative to bring all these kidney transplant patients together. Like, what I didn't realize, my brother just ran a conference last week. On every continent, 15% of people have some kind of kidney issue or are a kidney transplant recipient. Like, the whole nephritis thing is just huge around the world. So, and that's kidney. Just think about what you're talking about, Yuko. You're talking about half the population of the world. I mean, like, wow. But I think if you bring it back to what everyone said here, and then maybe take a look at, and I'd be glad to share my brother's contact with you. You got to start small, but start getting your population of people who's going to really wear it together right away before you actually produce a product. I mean, because just think about the different dimensions of all the women.
Thank you, Eileen. You're amazing. I just want to make sure that's no, don't be sorry. That was beautiful, and you did a beautiful job, as Seda put in the chat, synthesizing everyone's input. So that was beautiful. Do put in your brother's link if you could, and then I just want to make sure that let's see, Meltem, I think was Selin needs to. We want to give Selin's question room as well, but thank you, Eileen. That was really wonderful.
I want to say something, just because this is something that I really want to share with Yuko, because literally I was a little few minutes late because I was in a speaking event just before this. And this event is about taking charge of the conversation for women's health. Okay. So it's a conversation about that. And you have someone who's, these are women and creating products for women. That conference was not able to advertise, to even share that. And so the reason I bring this up is that this is a massive problem. And as soon as I saw the pelvic pain thing, alarm bells went off, because there is a reason why these products are not getting to people, is because these modern tech giants seriously just completely censor all of this. I mean, this is the most benign. It's, you know, it is really, really, I can't even go into, you know, the amount of censorship, and also for the male gaze is okay, but for women it's not. So it's a much bigger problem. So you're going to face that, and I wish you the best of luck, but build a really good product so people will buy and share your product organically. So, because that is one solid way to build a business in shy of being able to market, because we've never been able to market at all. We've never advertised in the 10 years of Crave. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And we have also Sally Miller, who just introduced, I don't know if you heard that, but Womaness, who's going to be one of our guests on a future salon. And I think that we can really build on that conversation of I think we have on the outside no idea that that's going on. So thank you for kind of highlighting or shining a light on that problem. It's huge.
Yeah, it's even birth control pills, like birth control pills, pelvic pain doctor. There's a Medium article about how a woman, she offers really sophisticated therapy for, you know, pelvic pain, pelvic floor issues. Her ad got taken out on Instagram and Facebook, and it's like mind blowing. So it's not just like a sex toy thing. It is all of women's health down there that is not okay to the tech giants, and it's a much bigger issue. So just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Selin, quickly.
Yes, I will be precise. Actually, my question is coming maybe less of a design as we know it, kind of like Margo as she presented herself last time. I'm more like about designing businesses, and I've been like farther away from the product, etc., like as I was trained to. But one concept that we really like mastered at Birsel+Seck was dichotomy resolution, and that's a design tool that I tend to carry a lot in any kind of venture and enterprise. And my question is two dichotomies that I would love to hear like everyone's input on, and it's not black and white, but just kind of the thinking around it. One is, how do you manage when you're a leader, a woman leader, urgent from important? And the second one is, when you're looking to grow your team, what we're raising right now, we want to grow our team to 15 people. When you're hiring, are you looking more for similarities or differences? And if there's one characteristic that you seek, yeah, just throwing it out there. Thank you.
Well, I'll start. You know, that I think the urgent versus the importance doesn't matter whether you're an organization of, you know, 1 million or 15. Everybody struggles with the same problem. I think and Aisha and I have been in some of the same leadership groups, and we laugh. Doesn't matter what industry we've all been in, whether you're a Broadway producer or you're a CEO, you struggle with the same thing. And I think a lot of that is to really lay out what's most important to you, to advance the business forward. And when you wake up in the morning, what are the things, before you look at your phone, before you do anything, what are those things that you really want to do, spend your time? Do those first, and make sure you do those before you respond to anything else. It's one of the best techniques, especially when you're an entrepreneur, because you never feel like there's enough hours in the day. And the worst feeling is if you feel like you went through the whole day and you actually didn't do the things that really mattered. You just reacted, and it's very frustrating. And so I think you have to decide you're in control of how you spend your time. And that's the most important thing you do as a leader, is choose how you spend your time, which then I think beautifully connects to the second question you're asking about hiring. Because when you have scarce resources, you have to think carefully about what are the most important hires that I'm making that can help me gain leverage and acceleration to reach my goal. And how you make those choices is probably the most important decision you'll make. And I would focus on what are the areas where you personally want to add to your toolkit in the beginning, in the early stage. I mentor a lot of founders, and it's not about looking for who's the same, but who's going to complement you to more quickly accelerate to the outcome. Who's going to ask the orthogonal question? Who's going to help you iterate to achieve your goal? And obviously culture does matter. So when there's a small team, each individual is exceptionally important. So I would definitely hold extremely high bar in terms of the cultural attributes and the openness to dodging and weaving and iterating against the shared mission that you have. But once you pass that bar, then I would focus on, who's going to help you gain acceleration.
That was beautiful. Thank you. We're 3 minutes over time, but Debbie, T, and Patrice, any thoughts?
I think Margo summed that up stunningly. Really, I don't think I could add anything any better.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Great. Well, thank you so much. On that note, Leah. Okay, I was just looking for you.
I'm here. We have a few last, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So Meltem, if you want to share the screen, first of all, we feel like each of these conversations just provides fodder for the next one. So hoping that we can continue, with our amazing guests or with new guests and them as participants, but we're really looking forward to our next salon. In the meantime, if you want to find out what's going on with Birsel+Seck, you can sign up for the newsletter. We have our virtual teas every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Where Aisha leads the group in a creative exercise, and it's really a wonderful get together of which many of you on this call right now are serial attendees, and we really appreciate it. If you want to find out what our next virtual tea, who is the guest or what the topic of our next virtual tea is, please go to our website or just reach out to us. And then we have an amazing workshop coming up, Design the Finances You Love, with Michael Lewis, who is a CFA and an MBA. And these are great workshops where, using Aisha's deconstruction reconstruction process, you figure out how you want to manage your finances and the type of financial life and the value that finances have for you. So we would welcome all of you to come join us for that.
Great.
And thank you.
Thank you, and love it.